Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Frankly Speaking on Fridays podcast. I am your host, Frank Pador. It is currently November 12th, 2022, 2:56 p.m. Eastern Time. Yes, I understand it's the Frankly Speaking on Fridays podcast, but let's be honest, that's just a title, and while I do my best to make it happen on Fridays, it doesn't always happen, as my history would show. However, there are good reasons as to why last week's podcast didn't happen, as well as why it didn't come out yesterday. But first thing is first. This is a very different and special podcast, specifically because it entails to yesterday, 11/11, Veterans Day. And the reason why that is special is because of a few reasons. Reason number one is that for those of you who do not know, I actually come from a military family of the naval branch. And while I did wish at one point in time to be able to serve in the Navy, like a couple of my family members, I was not able to do so. And the reason for that is because I didn't medically qualify and be satisfactory to do so due to the restless leg syndrome at the time. Not even sleep apnea was diagnosed. So I was not able to follow in the footsteps of the two family members who have served in the Navy, who is my Uncle Don, who currently lives in Virginia, and my mother, who served in the Navy for 26 years. And as luck would have it and timing would have it, the reason why yesterday's podcast did not happen is because my parents came and to visit both Shelby and I for a concert, and yesterday was my dad's birthday. But I also now have my mother here in the studio. You all know her as I commonly call her as Mom-ism, but please welcome my special guest for this podcast, my mother, Penny. Hi, Mom.
Hi, hello to everybody out there.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah. Enjoying the fun Indiana weather?
What's with the snow? Hello?
We knew the temperature was going to drop, and then we wake up to a bunch of snow. What was supposed to be an inch looks like as if it's like 2.5. It's something dumb. But it allowed us to stay inside, have some grilled cheese, chili. The family recipe chili is cooking right now. And we're able to just do this. Oh, yes, we played some music. Both my parents are violin players. Shelby brought out her bassoon, and I busted out the horn. And we played and made Mozart giggle and maybe roll over in his grave a little bit. But, so, the reason why I have my mother on the podcast is, one, it's the first time a family member has ever been on the podcast. Two is because you have served in the Navy for 26 years. And three, you're writing a book about your entire experience.
I am. I'm writing two books. Actually, the first book is called My Navy Adventure Active Duty, which was 4 years. And the second book will be My Navy Adventure Reserve Duty.
So two separate books.
Two separate books.
Okay. Are you going to have it labeled as like a part one or part two, or are they both just standalone?
It's going to be standalone
Okay.
because active duty and reserve duty are like standalone.
Okay. Well, we'll get all into all that in a moment. Quick week update. Obviously, my parents are with me. I got a call back from that agency that I auditioned for. Got a call back that was submitted, and yesterday or 2 days ago, I got a gig from the agency, which has been submitted. So, yay! It's been a busy time. So, as always, I normally commemorate this podcast with a shot to you, the dear listeners, to me, the asshole in the room with a microphone, and to the podcast itself. But in this instance, because of the holiday pass and the veteran sitting beside me in the room, we both agreed that it was appropriate, if not necessary, to have a moment of silence to those who are serving, who have served, and have paid the ultimate price for the freedom that we hold, well, sometimes without proper thought as to what it took to have that freedom. So please join us in a moment of silence. To them, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Oh, I mean, it seems a lot longer than it actually is,
I
doesn't
was
it?
just wondering, I hope your listeners aren't thinking that was dead air.
No, I was timing it. I saw, guys, dead air just brings me back to radio days. That was heart clenching. So, let's talk about you.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
mean, so, the entire time that you were serving, I remember, and I'm sure you remember, many um, instances of carrying your children while you were in the Navy, having to go through 3 times, not being able to serve because of labor and post baby, and then dealing with us crying as you left for active duty, us staying up late when you came back home. But all of that began much earlier in your life. Um, if I remember correctly, there are a bunch of reasons as to why, the idea of the Navy came to mind, why you wanted to join it. And I know your brother, my Uncle Don, was one of those reasons, but there's also a bunch of environmental reasons as well, right?
Well, at the age of 18 and getting ready to go into my senior year, it's like, so what am I going to do after high school? I never heard any of my parents saying, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And how can we guide you? And by the way, we put money away for your college fund. None of that was ever said. So it's basically up to me. And I did not want a 9 to 5 job. I wanted something more exciting. I wanted to travel and I definitely wanted college. So how can I achieve all of those wants and needs? So reading Uncle Don's letters was like being there. He has a way of writing a letter where you can smell the air and you can feel the wind and you can see everything that he would write to us about his ports of call or being on a ship. And I could see and I could feel what he was doing. And I wanted that. That's what I wanted to get into. But right about now, in my junior year, Vietnam was ending.
Hmm.
So do I have to be, I didn't know how this whole thing worked. So one day, the neighborhood, we would go down to the corner store, and with a quarter, you could buy this great big bag of candy. So we went down there one day, and this was new. There was this great big stand, and they had all kinds of pamphlets in it. So we kind of went around the stand, and wow, wait a minute, what's this? Army, Navy, Air Force? It was all about joining one of the armed forces.
You say we. Who is we?
Just a neighborhood gang
Okay.
of guys and girls, and we hung around together all of these years. So that was our favorite place to go and get our quarters worth of candy. So here we are looking at all these brochures, and someone said, I double dog dare you, and no kidding, that was a real thing, to grab one of these, fill it out, and send it in. Well, I grabbed Navy. It's the first thing I did. Grabbed the Navy, I filled it out, I sent it in. The next day, I got a phone call in the afternoon. Mail was quick back then.
Yeah.
I get a phone call. Hey, how's it going? My name's Dave, and you sent in some information. You're inquiring about the Navy. Why don't you come on down? Well, that totally freaked me out because now we're talking real.
Mm.
So I said, well, okay, how about Monday after school? Okay, we set up the time, and I had a weekend to think about it. So we set up the time, and I knew exactly where the recruiter station was. And so I'm driving there, so nervous. My hands were just soaking wet. And we're talking, I guess about January now. So I'm pulling into the driveway and into their parking lot, and I sat there for a minute thinking, I have a choice here. I can either turn around, go back home, this never happened, or I can go in there and be entertained. So I didn't know what was going to happen either way. This could change my life. So I was really nervous about it.
Mm.
So that's how it started.
Okay. Interesting how you're writing the book and yet your prolifically written brother is not.
I have, over the years, many, many times to write his books because he not only lived history, he made history.
Mm-hmm.
He was a part of this. He was a part of going behind the black curtain. He was rescuing refugees. He was right there front and center during the war times. He had on the deck of his ship Agent Orange.
Mm.
That they were transporting. He was there. He was a part of so many different things in his 21 years of active duty.
Mm-hmm.
So, did I want to be like him? Absolutely. I wanted to be on a ship. I wanted to be traveling to seas, going to the ports of call, and living life.
Sure. I mean, all the reasons that you said, not wanting to work a 9 to 5, wanting to have an option or funding for a college education, this sense of adventure. At least the sense of adventure was instilled to you by Uncle Don.
Oh, absolutely.
The other two, the lack of 9 to 5 and the college opportunity, that just came along as benefits as part of being of the military.
But what was really funny about the 9 to 5, I was worried about.
Still happened?
No, the military is not 9 to 5. It's a 24/7.
Oh, that's true. So you're working a gas station job then?
Okay.
But what was Uncle Don's reasoning for joining the Navy?
I think Uncle Don just needed to get out of our house, our home. Nope, our house.
Yeah.
It wasn't a home for him. I grew up in a very violent, terrible home. Every day was full of alcohol abuse, verbal abuse, emotional, physical abuse.
Mm.
And for Uncle Don, he was and is an amazingly smart man. He went to Wayne Tech High School. He held down jobs. He was a manager at McDonald's. I mean, had so much potential to do anything that he wanted to do. And I really don't know how he got into the Navy. He was into junior achievement, if your listeners know about junior achievement. I mean, all these things that he had already behind him. Somehow somebody saw this and got him into the Navy, and he retired as Master Chief.
Mm. And just as reference, both of my parents, I'm not sure about Uncle Don, but at least my parents, and when all this happened, was in Chicago. I'm in Indiana now for the sake of educational purposes, and just I'm here. But this all took place in Chicago years ago now.
Years ago, Northwest Side. I graduated from Schurz High School, but during my senior year, I was doing all of the things necessary to see if I qualified to get into the Navy.
Mhm.
So I just, I walked into the recruiter's office and I met this guy, and we called him Smitty. It seems that anybody that has a name with Smith, it was Smitty, and anybody that has an Anderson is an Andy, or
Mhm.
or something like that, or they take your job and they make you a nickname that way.
Sure.
So there was two Smiths and recruiters for the office. So one was Dave and one was Smitty. So yeah, it was very confusing. But they are well versed and well rehearsed with exactly how to say things and how they're watching your facial expressions. And when they see something that puts up a light, then they just move in
Mhm.
on that exact thing.
Yeah, they're basically career salesmen.
Absolutely. So he had his questions in front of him, and on the other side of the desk was all the forms that were necessary to start this process. So, why are you here? So tell me, why are you here, Penny? What do you want? So when I would tell them about, oh, I want blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what the Navy has?
Mhm.
We have 30 days vacation. How does that sound? 30 days vacation, paid vacation.
Ooh.
Absolutely. We have all your medical, all your dental. And what would you like to be in the Navy? Hey, wait, let's stop here. Let's go and watch a movie.
God.
So they stopped the whole thing, brought me into a room, and we watched a movie. Now, what do you think is going to be on here? It's going to be all jobs for guys. There they are on the ship with the airplanes, in the submarines. Oh, wait, you want to be a pilot? Guess what? There was no such thing as females on a ship.
What year was this that you saw the recruiter?
I saw the recruiter in 1975.
How many women that you can recollect or just give a guesstimation on who were actually enlisted or a part of the Navy?
I didn't know anybody. All I knew was me. How many the numbers? I have no idea.
Probably a lot less significant than what it is now.
Oh,
And they're
absolutely.
coming up 50 years later.
Most of the jobs that were for women back then were administrative
Mhm.
or they were medical.
Like nurses and
Nurses,
yeah.
not too many doctors. You did not see pilots. You did not see a woman in a submarine, a woman on a carrier was
Yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of. So I'm watching this movie thinking to myself, yeah, sure, that's going to happen. But
So,
I didn't know anything of that women weren't allowed to do this. All I'm watching is this movie with
mhm.
all of this men.
Yeah, so just a sausage fest.
But, well, I didn't go there. But anyway, we finished the movie. We came back and he goes, well, what did you think about that? Oh, I thought that was a great movie, but I didn't see any women running around in those movies. So what do you have for women? We have, at that time, 75 jobs. 75 jobs. Great. Well, what can I get into? What do you want to get into? I would love to get into planes, airplanes. I'd like to, I want to be a mechanic. That's what I want to be, as a mechanic. Is there any way I can be a mechanic? My dad was a carpenter, and I knew all of his tools of trade, but I was also his son, metaphorically. He would take me outside and he would say, come on, let's go tune a car.
Mhm.
And I did. And we learned, to take the whole engine, whatever we had to do to take it to tune it, put it back together again, and spark plugs and everything, and then go in the back and feel the puff of the exhaust and make sure that you needed that rhythm to make sure that it was right. The
Yeah.
rhythm had to be right.
Yeah.
How do you change a tire? How do you put gas in?
Mhm.
All these things that at my age, you don't see too many women out there. Back in the day, you pull up at a gas station and they ask you, so how much do you want? It was not a self-service gas station.
Yeah.
So I had the background of his job. Mom was a nurse, so I would listen to her, and she was great when it came to the English part of it,
Mhm.
and she liked science. So mom had that part. Dad was all about math, and dad was all about history. So I felt pretty equal in the home as far as the things that you needed, but I had no clue what I was going to be tested with as far as trying to get into the Navy. So the first thing is So I need your driver's license so I can do a basic background check on you. So here we go with the forms. Name, address, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're filling all that out. Here's my driver's license. Does a background check. Sure enough, do you remember making that wrong left-hand turn and you got a ticket? Oh, yeah, I remember. So, yeah, they had all that information. Nothing big.
Hmm.
No big deal. Okay, so what do you want to do next? You want to keep going? Let's keep going. So, okay, let's do a physical. Oh boy. I was 19 years old. I was 90 pounds soaking wet. I had glasses back then, pretty thick ones. That's what I was worried about. I wasn't going to be able to get in. No problem, except for the weight. They have a weight and standards chart that they follow. So here I am, 5'4". I definitely had to be more than 90 pounds. And you'll read more about that in my book.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not going to tell you the ending.
Yeah,
So,
when it comes out, you should, because it's comical and also just shows the dedication of this woman.
okay. So if you want me to tell you the rest of the story, I can let your listeners.
No, this is all a tease.
Oh, well, it's
Give-
definitely a
Give
tease.
you a generic background of just military life, individual reasons for someone in which to choose the military, whether or not just temporarily for the 4 years or for it to be a career.
Okay, well then you guys got to get my book.
That's right.
So I made it through the physical. The next thing was the ASVAB test, which those 75 jobs, this is a great test because it's 3 hours at least long, but it has every intricate test that you could think of. Electrical, English, mechanics, not too much science or history, but they're really getting into your brain of what your qualifications are.
What does ASFAB stand for?
Oh my gosh. You're really
Not
tough.
to put you on the
right?
spot.
Yeah, okay. Armed Forces, let's see. Vocational, battery test. And we're going to have to look that one up, you guys.
Okay.
That's been a while since I've done that one. Frank's going to look it up.
I can look it up.
ASVAB. ASVAB.
Let's see.
There it is. ASVAB.
Let's see.
So let's see if they have a definition. Anyway, we sat there and we took these tests.
There it is. The Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery.
There you go. So
Wow.
yeah, that was my first acronym.
That's a hell of an acronym to begin with.
Right? So after that, I get a phone call and Smitty sat down with me and he goes, well, I've got some good news and you've got to make some decisions. And I says, okay, what? And he goes, you could either be a jet mechanic or a journalist. Those are the two things that you hit the highest marks on. So there's part of mom and there's part of dad that came out.
Yeah.
So he says, what do you think? Don't tell me now. Go home, think about it.
Sure.
I got to the parking lot and I already knew the answer. There was no way I wanted a 9 to 5 behind a desk job.
Yeah.
So I walked right back in and I said, jet mechanic. And he started the paperwork. Now you have to think about back then. We didn't have fax machines. We didn't have computers. We didn't have any of this electronic amazing things that you can do to communicate. We had a telephone and we had a copy machine and we had a fax machine. And that, that's about it. That's the only way. And snail mail. That's the only way that these guys can communicate.
Telegram even?
Telegram?
Was that?
Yeah, we still had that. Telegram. Pony Express.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, we got the paperwork going. So we started this, and I still didn't tell anybody at home. Because why should I? If this whole thing fell through, then there was no reason for me to.
Sure.
It would just fall through. And I still, let's see what's going to happen with all this. So as this time went through, Smitty had to somehow weave, boot camp in and school in, and then where am I going? And all these things have to happen. And all it takes is one sneeze, and the whole thing is changed.
That seems very delicate for our military forces.
Yeah, and you can imagine back then, And now it's a voluntary force. It's not drafted force. So it's a whole different thing for the recruiters to do also.
Yeah,
So that's how it started.
I see. So, something that you wanted to clarify and something that was mentioned earlier in the podcast is that you stipulated, you have your reserve duty and your active duty, and Uncle Don was strictly active duty.
Strictly active duty.
So, what is the difference, not only within the definition and the duties, which correspond to those being a reserve, being active duty, but what are the difference of benefits as well? Because I believe there is a difference between what you receive in the during and after the fact.
Well, an active duty person, my 4 years active was spent in training squadron VT 23. And what our job was to take these men, young men, that came from officer candidate school. They came to us and we would teach them how to fly in a 2-seat training jet.
Okay.
Okay. Here I am now there 24/7. So my benefits were free education, 24 medical, dental. So everything as far as that goes. And I got a paycheck every 2 weeks. And yes, 30 days a year vacation. So that was great. A reserve side is a little bit different. Now, depending on your capacity of reserves also. There's a full-time reserve called a TAR, and they TAR. And these guys are 24/7, but they're reserves. They don't like to be called reserves. And sorry, but that they are. But they are active duty. Okay. I was a reserve after I got out because I was an E5. I changed my rate, which is my job. Because why? Because women weren't allowed. At that time, it was a very sexist Navy. It's become better, I'm hoping. But when I went to get into my shop to start my job, because I had to go through several different steps in order to do this, the guy that was in charge, he was a first class petty officer, said there will be no split tails in my shop.
Well then.
So we have a broom, a mop, and a coffee pot. Which one do you want?
Wow.
I aced my final test in school. I was ready to turn wrenches and be doing my job just like the guys do. I didn't even think about this division between men and women. I didn't care. I just wanted to start turning wrenches.
Yeah.
Okay, so I changed my job to being an I still wanted aviation. So I became an aviation storekeeper. When I came out, I had that urge. Sometimes you get the calling of something that you did and it's missing and I want it back. But I couldn't get back in because there were too many females doing that job at my rank. I was an E5 when I got out. So that's called the rate is closed. You can't get in. So what am I supposed to do? The recruiter I was talking to then said, go reserve. I couldn't believe it because the reserves for us when we were active duty, we made fun of them. They were weekend warriors and Christmas help. They came in and just to kind of pick up the slack of maybe somebody being gone for a while, kind of like a temporary worker, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
But some of them, well, now we're talking people who are on the outside doing their own profession. And they come in and they're doing a whole different thing, possibly a whole different job.
Yeah.
So these guys are coming in and you're scared to death that they're going to screw things up. So usually when you see a reservist, it's like, okay, I'm glad you're here, but sit in a chair and be a nice little reserve and don't touch anything. And that's how there was no respect for the reserves. And unfortunately, I treated them just the same. They're going to be gone. I'll never see them again. I don't care. Just don't touch my stuff. Well, I have a ribbon and a medal that says I did 4 years active duty. And now all of a sudden I'm signing papers that said I'm going to be one of those weekend warriors. So what happens now? Everything changes. Attitude changes. Respect changes. You're not at the top of the class like you were. You're at the bottom. Yeah. So give me the mop and the broom and a coffee pot is basically what happens.
Yeah.
But you have to build yourself up as far as all the benefits that you got when active duty, totally different now because you are not active duty. You don't get full dental and medical and vacation. And the college benefits that you got were hopefully the ones that you got from active duty, because now you get the GI Bill.
Hmm.
That'll help pay for college. And there's other things that you can get to help give you scholarships. So, but not full time. In order for me to get my retirement pay, I had to wait until I was 60. For Uncle Don, he got out. The next month he got his check.
So what Smitty was pitching to you was active duty life.
Yes.
Did he mention at all the option of reserve?
Not TAR, not reserve. If he would have, I would have gone TAR, because they travel the world too.
Hmm.
They travel the world too. When my option came for traveling, I wanted to be with Uncle Don. I didn't know anything about what is a home port. A home port is where they go home with their ship, and this is where their home is.
Yeah.
This is where his wife was and his son was, and he was in Rota, Spain. I
Yes.
didn't know that. All I knew is he was on a USS somebody out there in the Indian Ocean, and I wanted to be with him. The chief came to me and said, "We found your brother." Well, good. I'm glad. And he's on a USS whatever. I said, "Okay, great. So make my orders and put me with my brother." And he looked at me. He goes, "He's on a carrier." I have no idea what that is. And he's with 5,000 other guys. Okay. And there's no place for a woman on a ship. They don't have berthing, which I don't know what a berthing was. They don't have a head. That's a bathroom. No, they don't have heads just for you. Well, I said, so make them.
Uh-huh.
And he gave me orders to Kingsville, Texas.
Ah,
Yeah, there you go.
there you go. To back it up a little bit, there's someone that is within our humble little family that I wish to mention, just because while you are a woman joining the military, the Navy in the 1970s, mid 1970s, you went off to boot camp 1975, 1976.
I had to wait 9 months to get my jet mechanic school. So I graduated from high school June of 76. I didn't even get into boot camp until May of 1977.
So 1977, you go to boot camp, and you are a white woman. You met my godmother in boot camp,
No,
not in boot camp.
no. I met her in VP 60 in Glenview.
Ah, what? You two obviously became close if you were to name her my godmother.
Absolutely.
And I know she probably shared with you some differences between a white woman in the Navy and a black woman in the Navy.
We actually never discussed that. Isn't that something? All
Really?
the years, yeah, we never compared notes what was boot camp. But again, it all depends on what, like I was talking about, the different divisions.
Mm-hmm.
There's some in boot, and I found this out in the reserves because I had a fit about it. In order for me to get where I was as an E5, I spent those years in as an and built myself up from an E1 to an E5.
Right.
I had to take the tests, I had to take the physicals, I had to do everything that was required to get to this level.
Yeah.
They have something that was called, I don't know if they still have it nowadays, but it's a program where they take like what is your job on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So if I need somebody that I need an accountant or somebody for the Navy that has something to do with the numbers, but you work for an accounting agency, why don't you join the reserves and I can make you an E5?
I see.
Yeah.
So it's using civilian practices for military benefit.
Yeah.
I
So I've run into a few of them and I had a fit because I worked hard to get what I got.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt angry and not jealous, but I felt that these people were coming in and they were doing this job without earning this job.
Yeah.
So I never really talked to Aunt Marilyn about that. She is affectionately known as Aunt Marilyn.
Yes.
And she was administrative duty, and she's brilliant, and I just love her. But we just latched on to each other. We were in Japan when we first knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
I worked downstairs working with the maintenance people. She worked upstairs working with the administrative people. We were on the plane together, separate seats. It wasn't until we were put into the same room and had to spend 2 weeks together. And she rolled her eyes and went, "Oh no, I have to spend my 2 weeks with her." I was very, what they call, ate up. When it came time for us to get on that plane to go to Japan, I was in my dress blues.
Mm.
I had my ribbons, and it was just out of the cleaners and shine shoes. And to me, I was looking sharp. Everybody else was looking at me like, who is she? And what is she doing? And this is my first time going as a reservist. This is my first time doing something with the squadron.
Yeah.
So I thought that this is what you do. No. No. To get from here to Japan is a long ride, and you just need to chill out and relax.
What is that, like an 18-hour plane
Well,
ride?
at least we took a commercial flight, which was nice,
Okay.
instead of a Navy P3. But that's the squadron I got attached to.
Yeah.
That comes later. But Aunt Meryl and I started talking, started getting to know each other, and just bonded, just latched onto each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if I ever take a trip out there in Albuquerque, bring some recording equipment with me.
Oh, she'd love that.
See what she'd have to say.
I'd love to hear what
Get-
she said the first time she met me.
Oh yeah, I guess some of that Black Sass recorded. I miss it.
We are ebony and ivory. There's no doubt. Aunt Marilyn is as black as the night, and I've never even looked at that. And that is because of boot camp, Frank. I grew up in a very racist house.
Yeah.
And, and it was bad. It was bad. And I woke up in the first day in boot camp, and I went, oh shit. I'm looking at 40 women of everything. You name it, there it was. And I thought I was going to get killed in the night during the next 8 weeks with these women.
Mhm.
Because there they are, black, white, Puerto Rican, this, that, Mexican, oh my gosh. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We were there for one reason, and that was to get out in 8 weeks. That was the goal. How are we going to do that? All these women, all these different walks of life. We had rich, we had poor, we had educated, we had stupid, we had criminals. Back in those days, the judge can say jail or Navy. Before I slam on this hammer, ready, go, Navy.
Mhm.
You didn't know. You didn't know what their background was. It didn't matter, because all we had to do was get through this.
No, you all were there to get through it. You all wore the same clothes, slept in the same crappy bunks,
Ate the same crappy food.
went through the exact same discipline and regiment. Yeah, there was no class, no differentiation of race. And if I imagine if you were to bring that up, or to even do something remotely racist, I suppose, or say something remotely racist, you were reprimanded.
Out.
Just
Yeah.
entirely out.
You would most likely be out. If there was any type of fighting going on that had to do with race,
Mm.
it would be. We got in a world of trouble because we had our leader. She was maybe 18 years old, and she wasn't liked by anybody because she thought that she knew it all, and she was favored. We felt that she was favored by our commander and our company commander. So we wrote a this is the most stupidest thing. What do you think the military is? It is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
But we wrote up this great big why we wanted her out and we wanted somebody else in. And I'm taking a shower, and all of a sudden I hear her hit the line. I'm full of soap here. What are you talking about, hit the line? Hit the line meant get your ass on the line. That was a designated line on the floor. Now. So
No towel.
So I grabbed the towel and got into my flip flops and went out there dripping on the floor, and I'm like, what's going on? And here we are, and this woman came in and ripped us a new one. What do you think this is? Blah 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 blah. And she had that piece of paper that we all signed to get her out. And she took that piece of paper and she shredded it in 100 bits, threw it up in the air, screaming at us. She is your leader. She's going to be your leader, and this will never happen again. Okay, then. Carry on. Yeah, ran back into the shower and finished. I said, oh, Totally different attitude when I came out of the shower.
I bet.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
They tell you what's going on, and that's that. One good thing about my dad being such a jerk, there was no gray. It's black and white. I tell you to do this, you do it, done. So in the military, I didn't have any problems with the transformation of being a civilian and whining about something, because there's no whining. You just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well then, all more details, I'm sure, which can be found in your book.
That's the reason that I'm writing it, Frank. I have all these pictures, and I have original everything,
Yes.
all my contracts, all my pay stubs, all pictures and notes and journals and things. If I died right here, right now in front of you and your listeners, all of those would be what? Thrown away. You guys have no clue what all this is, or what it meant to me, what these pictures meant to me, what these people meant to me. And somebody said, why don't you write on the back of the pictures who they are and what was going on in the picture? And then somebody else said, well, wait a minute. What were you doing? What were you feeling? What was it like for you? Put that in a book. And that's why I'm writing the book.
So you're using these pictures as basically reference points in order to include into the book.
And it's going to be my time goes on through my Navy career. You can see the changes in how I grew up in the Navy.
Yeah. So what were, the highest points and the lowest points within your 26 years of being in the Navy? There's so much time and history. There was a marriage, 3 kids,
A divorce.
a divorce.
So the high points, well, I wrote down some notes here, and I'm not going to bore you guys to death, okay? So I'll tell you about the scariest part of the Navy that I ever was in.
Sure.
The scariest part was we were flying into, you guys were home with Dad, and I'm flying on P3 going into Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. That's where I retired from. And we're flying in, and I'm walking through the plane, which is called a tube. And I hit a certain spot, and I could feel this thunk. And I'm like, what? Thunk. But it was louder, and it was harder. And I'm like, what is that? And I ran over to my senior chief, which is Andy, and he's in depth into this Clive Cussler book, and he's got his feet up, and he's into this chapter, and I said, come here, you gotta hear this, you gotta feel this, and he goes, leave me alone. I literally grabbed him by his jacket and pulled him out of his chair and brought him basically to where that spot was, and he felt it.
Yeah.
And his eyes were as big as his face, and he knew it. He knew something was really wrong, and he went flying through the tube. When he got to the cockpit, he opened up the curtain, and there was red lights and buzzers and beepers going off everywhere. And he closed the curtain back, and he ran to me, and he said, set 5 and put your headphones on. Set 5 means your seatbelt, it comes over your shoulder,
Yeah,
and it
5
hooks,
buckles, right?
and it's got 5 buckles.
Yeah, one through the crotch, around the waist, and through the shoulders.
And set 5, put your headphones on. So I put my headphones on, and he's got his headphones on. And now the announcement came, set 5, through the whole tube. So now everybody's scrambling for their seat, and they got their headphones on. What happened was a hydraulic pump went out, and we had no landing gear.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
So they're talking back and forth to the tower. They're talking about, have you checked this, check that, check that. Can you manually lower the landing gear? No, couldn't do that. So we're coming in, and I'm looking ahead to the lights, and there was a lot of them on the ground, and they were talking about foaming the runway. This is Friday night. Usually, most of the time, it's just a skeleton crew that's on the base, not a big deal. Here comes the airlift, we were called.
Right.
No, not tonight. The whole thing was full. And I'm sitting there, and I'm listening, and I'm praying at the same time. And then all of a sudden, I heard 3 down and locked. Repeat, 3 down and locked. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And we got off of the plane. Whoever designed the gear, the landing gear, was a genius. They have it designed so that when it goes up into the plane, it's facing forward, so that when you're coming down, the air actually forcing can push it down into place. push it down into place.
That's neat.
So it pushed down, it locked,
Mm-hmm.
and we landed safely.
Wow.
And we changed our pants and had a good beer that night. Let me tell you what. Yeah, so that was actually the scariest part of my life, up there in that plane.
Yeah.
The proudest thing that I've ever done in my 26 years was making a chief, not becoming a chief. I worked hard to become a chief, and with your support and Dad's support, helped me become a chief also. But the leadership in the squadron really put a boot up my ass to become a chief. And the proudest thing that a chief can do is to make chiefs. So now you're taking your leadership and everything that you were taught, and then you're trying to make a chief also. Chief Bowman, Jim Bowman, was my first chief that I helped make. So you train him how, and so basically going back to boot camp, walk and talk. You are now not the gopher, but you're the leader. So you're going to be the one that's going to tell those group of people over there that they need to do this. And it's not coming from the skipper, it's coming from you, because that's how you gain respect and that's how you become a leader.
Tell me then, obviously that's a major accomplishment, but tell me, what is Sailor of the Year, the competition of that, and what you had to do in order to even be considered?
Before I became chief, every month there's something called a Sailor a month. So how do you do that? Well, you just don't sit in your chair, and this is a reserve. We're only there once a month. That's it. It's 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So you have to be on top of being on time, looking sharp, being interested in your job. You want to achieve things. During the time that you're there, you can do correspondence courses to turn them in to make you a better sailor. And then the biggest thing again is leadership. Are you showing somebody else how to do this job? Are you going over and above and saying, quit moaning, let's just do it, let's go do it? And then the 2 weeks out of the year, you are out of your squadron. Maybe you're in a different country, maybe, but you're doing the same job. Now, how can you do this? So 1 year, I had to go to a school and learn a whole different computer language. When I came out of the school, we were sent to California for our 2 weeks duty. Guess what's there? The brand new computer system that I just learned. The guy that was a tar that was active duty had no clue. Okay, we had a plane that needed something called graph paper so that they can watch the sound buoys go down, and then it gets grafted. That tells you what the submarine is going to be. We had none. The plane took off with the graph paper.
Oh no.
And I had to find, now my job is hide and go seek. So I had to somehow get on the computer, I had to find out who's got this graph paper, going over and above. And that's part of becoming the sailor of the month, or the sailor of the quarter, or the sailor of the year. They take, what are you doing on the outside? Are you doing community work on the outside? Are you going to school on the outside? What do you do for a job? So they take all of this, put it together, and then what did you do? What are you doing? And what are you going to do? And that's called an eval. Now, so they took all this, what I was doing with the squadron and what I was doing outside, what was I doing with you guys? They put it together, and the competition was very tense. You have to act, so you have got all these reserves. Just think about all these reserves. A weekend and B weekend. So you have like the first part of the month, the second part of the month. And that's called your A and your B weekend, 2 different weekends. That's competition too. You got everybody's coming together. Now, who's the best of the best?
So this is of all the reserves in the entire Navy?
Nope, just in your squadron.
Just in your squadron, okay.
Yeah, and all the different jobs. Not just your job, all the different jobs you're competing against. They're looking at your physical. Did you take your physical? Did you do your shots? Did you do your dental? Are you up on everything that you're supposed to be? That's what you're looking at. They're looking at somebody that they want the other sailors to look at as a leader. So I was very much involved in the First Class Association. I would come in on my off weekend and be a part of that. So I was the leader of that. It was the first reserve that was the president of the First Class Association.
Sure. Sure.
So I did that. I don't know. I just loved doing what I did and being a part of it. Hated being a part, being without you. And I wanted to show you guys Japan. I wanted to show you. But this is, when I'm there, that's my focus.
Yeah.
So I was in competition with all of these other reservists, and I made Sailor of the Year. So I made Sailor of the Quarter first, Sailor of the Year, and then I had to take the Chief's test. The Chief's test and any other test in the reserves is only twice a year. It was August and February. So I was stuck. It was called Pass But Not Advance. And I did it for 10 years, 2 times a year. I could not get past E5. I wanted to be first class, and then I wanted to be chief. And I couldn't get past this. In my 20th year, this is the last time I could do this. I went up to the career counselor and I said, you tell me, how am I going to go down to those people in that shop, and how am I going to tell them, we got to do this one more time? I know it's been 10 years, but we can do this one more time. How am I supposed to do that? She said, you lie. You tell them that it's open. You tell them that this time they're going to make it. Okay. So I went down there and I gave them the spiel. We walked over. We took the test, and guess what? It was open. It was open.
Wow.
I got a phone call. Congratulations, you made first. And I thought, yay! I don't have to worry about taking a Chief's test for at least a year.
Sure.
At least. Nope, wrong answer. I found out in December that I made first class. One of the career counselors were walking by and heard my conversation about, yay! She walked in, she goes, oh, no, not you. I went, what? What? She said, because of your evals, you're going to be taking a Chief's exam in February.
Oh, God.
That's what I said.
So you didn't pass E1? Or you passed, but you immediately had to do?
I immediately had it. So I made E6.
Okay.
I had to immediately start studying for the Chief's exam. And oh, by the way, the Sailor of the Year. When you're Sailor of the Year, you go in front of a board of E9s, Master Chiefs.
Yeah.
And you can become chief right then and there. If they feel that you are chief material, they can deem you chief. So, okay, I had to study for that Chief's, the Sailor of the Year board,
Yeah.
and then go right over and take my Chief's exam. So I was first.
That sounds like a tremendous amount of stress and pressure.
I was up all night. Finally, at 5 o'clock, I decided I better get an hour of sleep. So I got an hour's sleep, woke up, took a shower, got into my dress blues. The other Sailor of the Years were there. And you would think that they would be out to kill you, but they weren't. One had a lint brush and one had a comb. And we were inspecting each other and making sure the ribbons were just right and your cover was just, and everything was just right. Because that's what the Master Chiefs are looking for.
Yeah.
Chief. They want a chief. Are you chief material? We're going to find out. So they put you in a room, and the room is full of Master Chiefs, and you are shitting in your pants. Sorry. And then what did they do? They have me in a skirt, and they put me in a overstuffed chair like that, and I felt like it sucked my butt in, and my feet were sticking straight up. And that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to make you feel uncomfortable, and then they zap you with all of these questions. What if? What if? Who is the chain of command of that? And who's the chain of command of this? And you walked out of there completely drained.
I bet.
The last question was, if you were in charge of the reserves, what would you do to make it better for everybody? My answer was, because of you guys playing video games all the time, driving me crazy, was this. When I go home at Sunday night and I have to come back a whole month later, you lose so much. You have to basically come back and get acclimated to the computer program again and get acclimated to your job and the passwords and everything that has to be done. What if Nintendo could come out with a video game just for my job? Or a video game for everybody's job? So a jet mechanic job or administrator's job, or just think about that. Different levels, different books, different tests that we had to do in order to get into the next level.
How did they take it?
They liked it.
Hmm.
They liked it. Has it ever been? I don't know if there's ever such a thing. But that would make a reservist feel so much more connected than to go home and be disconnected.
Sure.
So that was the toughest thing about being a reservist, was the disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know what your time is, but okay, I wanted to also say to your listeners, there's a difference here between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. We just celebrated Veterans Day. Veterans Day is to give respect, pay respect to the veterans that are still alive and still here with us today. Thank you very much for your service, all those who are listening. And it doesn't matter what branch. It doesn't matter if you're a tar or a cell res or active duty. Thank you very much for being a part of our country. Now, a Memorial Day is when we give and we pay our dues and our respect to the people who have passed away. This is when everybody, and I mean everybody out there, needs to go to the Arlington National Cemetery. They need to watch the guards marching back and forth at the unknown soldiers.
Yeah.
They need to stand there and just take a look and take a breath and look over the hundreds of thousands of graves that are out there. It was really, it gets to you. If anything gets to you, that will get to you.
Sure.
That is the difference. And people get that always mixed up. Memorial Day always get thank you for serving. Well, I'm not dead yet, but thank you very much.
Yeah.
With
Memorial is in memory.
Correct. So that's for you listeners, just to let you know. Let's see, what else? So I was basically a go-getter, but you were talking about marriage and kids and how does that go in there. When I was active duty, I saw a lot of marriages, but a lot of divorces.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you're going to marry a civilian, they don't know what a watch is. They don't know when that phone rings, you got to go. There's no, I'm sorry, it's your anniversary, or you're having a baby. It doesn't matter. That phone rings. They've got you for 24/7 and you go.
Yeah.
That's where there was a lot of divorces. I can't imagine what Uncle Don went through with him at that time, 9 months at sea, 3 months home.
Do you think marriages last if it's a military personnel with another military personnel?
That helps a lot because at least that they can understand what duty is. When duty calls, then they can understand, okay, go to your watch and go do what you got to do.
Yeah.
There's a whole different understanding. Reserves, so much better because Sunday night comes, the skipper says dismissed, everybody whips off a salute, and you go home.
Yeah.
See you next month.
Yeah.
Or you got the 2 weeks that you have to do.
Right.
But that changed when we had Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Now I'm on call. And that was scary because you guys were little. You were just a little kid, Frank.
Yeah.
But my sea bag was by the front door. We had wills. We had power of attorneys made out just in case I had to go. We had grandmas on standby.
Yep. Yep.
So I was ready to go mentally, emotionally, no.
Yeah.
But if that phone rang,
You were
I would have
gone.
been gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the best part of my Navy career was my test of leadership on 9/11. Even though I wasn't in New York, I wasn't in any form of danger. I was doing my 2 weeks in Puerto Rico. And we just finished our shift. We worked from 7 at night until 7 in the morning. And we were watching The Perfect Storm. I was watching with Sandy Grimm. She was a senior chief.
Yes.
We were watching The Perfect Storm. The knock came at the door. It was an active duty guy from an active duty squadron we were working with. And he says, what are you guys doing? And we're eating popcorn and watching The Perfect Storm. He goes, why aren't you watching the news? And we're like, have no clue what he was talking about. Turn on the news. Turn on the news. Tower 1 was already hit.
Yeah.
I looked at him and I went, what's this, that's a new movie, right? And he goes, no, that's happening right now. And I looked at Sandy and I said, shit, we got to find senior chief.
Yeah.
So, and she was scared to death. She had family in the towers. So she was scared to death. And it's so, when you're in uniform you're the chief.
Yeah.
That's all. You cannot be anything else. Even though all of these emotions and everything, all these fears and anxieties and things that are happening, you're the chief and people are looking at you for the leadership that they need. So we jumped in our uniform. We jumped in a car. We went to go find Senior Chief, who was fishing at the pier with Ed Whiteside.
Yep.
So they're having a good time out there until the Hummer showed up with a machine gun on top of it and told them to hit the deck.
Jesus.
Show me your ID card. Senior Chief, we've just been attacked. This pier is closed. Next thing that we had to do was figure out a plan. What do we do now? We had to take care of the blue shirts, which are the workers. So we went to the barracks. Our skipper was there, just happened to be there on his way out to South America to go do drug operations. He was there with us. All right, this is what you're going to do. You're going to wake everybody up. Even though they're asleep, go wake them up. Get them in this room now. So Ed Whiteside gave up his room. We woke everybody up. The first thing we did was pray for the people. Next thing he said is, I want you to fill up the cars, get money, get food, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
Get some sleep. Get ready to work at 7 o'clock. Are you kidding? I didn't sleep all day.
No, I can't.
I was wide awake, wondering what the hell was going to go on. The one thing I could do, I couldn't call Dad, but I did send everybody in the Naval Enlisted Reserve Association that I'm a part of an email and said, please call Jerry and tell him that I'm okay. And they did. So what happens? What are you going to do? You don't know what's going to happen. But you have to be prepared for it. And that's what this was all about. All of those years of me being in the Navy, all of the leadership that I learned from the best of the best, it had to work now because we've never been in this situation before. So.
No, that was 2001. What was your rank in 2001?
I was a chief.
You were a chief. Okay. Yeah, scary times.
Scary times.
Scary times.
But that could happen at any time. And you have to be ready for it. You can't be a wimp hiding in a corner. You have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And we were. We were tested that day, and we made it through. We didn't go to active duty. My car didn't turn any different color. I wasn't sent anywhere. And thank you, God. But the place I wanted to be, more than anything, was New York. I wanted to help those poor people find their loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I wanted to kill the son of a bitch that did it.
Oh, that happened years later.
Yeah, and it wasn't going to be by Penny, that's
No.
for sure.
Well, if you were part of SEAL Team 6, I'd be more afraid of you.
Thanks a lot.
Are there anything else that you wanted to mention before ending?
We're going to end on this note. Retirement.
Yes.
Active duty, like I said, they get their check the next month. Reserves, it took me 1.5 years. Why? Because number one, I waited, and you shouldn't wait. So right now, as you're listening to me, get your pen and a paper. Write this down. Go find your shit. Where is it? All those pay stubs, all those papers that you had for your active duty orders. Go find them. Anything that you have from your correspondence courses, go find them. Do you know where your life is for the military? Do you have anything that you have? Get it out. Put it in front of you. This is what I want you to do. Get it chronologically, put it in order. The reserves are based on points.
I see.
1 day of active duty is 1 point. 2 days, 1 day of reserve is 2 points. Add it up. Anything and everything you can think about. So how many reserve days, how many active duty days, the whole thing. You have to have it all lined up because you have to fill out this 9-page. I'm not kidding. 9-page. It's not as easy as putting in your name and your social and shabam, there you are. Oh no. You have to write down all the places you're attached to and your points.
God.
Yes. Absolutely. It's painstaking to do all this.
They don't make it fair.
Oh, well, and they don't care if you don't apply for it. If you don't apply for it, it's more money for them, guys. So you have got to make sure got to pass this on. Get a hold of your other shipmates and tell them, get your shit together. Don't wait.
Stay organized.
Stay
And
organized.
save every trace of paperwork in electronic form. And if it's electronic form, make it physical.
Yeah, try to do everything that you possibly can, that you can read these things in points. That's the whole thing. They don't give a shit how many days you did. Yay for you, 4 years active duty. What does that mean to them? That's what it counts for. Go to your VA. If you are active duty, if you have a disability, go to them, find out what your rights and your benefits are. Do it. And tell your story. I'm telling my story. Come on, get out the video, get out a recorder, get a pen and paper. What's your story? Tell us what your story is.
Yeah.
Do you have pictures? If anything, let me tell you, it's therapeutic.
I bet it is.
You remember the faces, you remember the stories, you remember the laughs and hoisting up the beers and making the cheers. Do it.
The struggles, falling into the holes.
Your family, what did they do for you or they didn't do for you? I mean, all of this, again, is very therapeutic. I want to read to you guys, I'm closing here. I was asked to do this when I was just a chief select, and I had no clue what this was. But you will read this at the retirement ceremony in 2 hours. Yay!
Yep.
Okay. I've heard it many times, and I'm sure you have too. It's called The Watch. For 20 years, this sailor has stood the watch. While some of us were in our bunks at night, this sailor stood the watch. While some of us were in school learning our trade, this shipmate stood the watch. Yes, even before some of us were born into this world, this shipmate stood the watch. In those years when the storm clouds of war were seen brewing on the horizon of history, this shipmate stood the watch. Many times he would cast an eye ashore and see his family there needing his guidance and help, needing that hand to hold during those hard times, but he still stood to watch. He stood to watch for 20 years. He stood to watch so that we, our families, our fellow countrymen, could sleep soundly in safety each and every night, knowing that a sailor stood to watch. Today, we are here to say, shipmate, the watch stands relieved. Relieved by those that you have trained, guided, and led. Shipmate, you stand relieved. We have the watch.
I remember hearing that many times in my life. Yeah. Well, with that said, that is the podcast for this week. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank my mom for being a part of this. Be sure to check out her book whenever it's published. They are called, what again?
My Navy Adventure, Active Duty will be first, and then My Navy Adventure, Reserve Duty.
And I will keep you up to date as far as progress and when those may be published and when they will be available, either in stores or online. So thank you for joining me on the podcast. I hope you had fun.
Thank you, Frank. I did. And I hope your listeners weren't bored too much.
I don't think they will. I think they'll get quite a kick out of this. With that said, this has been the Frankly Speaking on Fridays podcast, found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you wish to email the podcast to send in a suggested topic, articles of interest, or just want to say hello, you can do so at fsofpodcast@gmail.com. Until then, until the next podcast comes around, which next Friday will be the 18th, I hope to talk to you then. So thank you again, Mom.
You're welcome.
Thank you for those who are currently serving, for those who have retired, and of course to those who have paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Thank you. And until next time, good night, sleep well, sweet dreams, and au revoir.